Alright, so this is one of the projects I'm working on in light of a program called Storyscape shutting down. And so I was one of the first early beta testers playing that game. I got to see early versions of pretty much everything there, and we got to see things before they were completed. We got to see things after they got completed, and so for me, I got to see the development Storyscape. Got to appreciate how it was different from other apps like Choices and uh, I'm not sure if the other one's called Moments or something, but there's just a whole bunch of different kind of graphic novel, choose your own adventure apps out there. And I was kind of surprised to hear that Storyscape shut down because it had such big backing in terms of being a part of like 20th Century Fox and stuff like that. And I just didn't think it would shut down, but it did shut down, and I found out a little bit later when I was looking into it. And so I figured, hey, this might be the right time to start developing my own app, which is in the spirit of Storyscape. So this is kind of a work in progress. I'm not sure if this name's going to stick or anything, but so far I just came up with the idea for a name called Spiritscape. Eternity has to do with the name of the story world that all these stories are going to exist in. I do want a kind of like unified story world so that there could be overlap between the characters, and they could be taking 1,000 years in the past, 1,000 years in the future. And so I have that kind of idea to make all these stories connected in some way. And what this does is it helps create a more consistent basis for how to tell these stories and what happened in the past. For example, instead of how in the regular world we might have two different political parties at a time. Basically, it's always one versus the other. Whereas in this story world, there's always three, pretty much. So, just for an example of how things are different, and as people are going to read these stories, they're going to understand the story world. They're going to get invested. They're going to see characters overlapping, and so this is just a concept for pages in terms of how the app might work. But I think I might change this. I don't think this is how it's going to look in the finality. Mainly because it's a little bit too similar, I think, to Storyscape, and you got to change things up sometimes. You can't make things too similar. Usually, changing the style is enough because you can't patent game mechanics, right? But in terms of the layout, I think that might be too similar, and so things are slightly different here. But I think I'm going to change it. I'm probably going to make it a lot more kind of like three-dimensional interactive, as in this is going to be like a pillar that turns, and then it's going to show this on its side or something. And so it's almost going to be like a kind of a square box pillar that's going to like flip around, and it's going to be a lot more smooth and interactive in terms of how people see it. It's not going to just flip the next page. I don't know. We'll see what happens in testing, but I would like to have just a clean, simple interface. I think that Storyscape did it right. And for the most part, I want to follow that example, which is why it's called Spiritscape, because it's in the spirit of Storyscape. And so, what was important in terms of Storyscape, besides just the stories, and the stories are really well written. I don't know if my story is going to be that good. I think just from the beginning, I'm going to use stories that I do have, and I do have a long line of stories, which I think I'm getting better at telling, by the way. But I'm going to start by telling my own stories, and then, hopefully we'll get other writers involved, and that's kind of like the idea of it. It's just to build the engine, make it available so that other writers can probably, like, involve themselves in the process as well, so we can put out more content for people. And so that's the very idea of it. So this is kind of just the place where you can go through these categories. They can collapse and open, and you can slide through them or something. You have over here, you have the actual page. Once you've selected a story, it goes into the page. You could read descriptions. It shows you can just play it. It costs a coin or a heart, and so these hearts are decisions that you make, choices in the game. This basically equivalent of diamonds. And then these coins are what you use to kind of like play the games. And so I'm having this idea. I didn't have this idea, actually. My ex had this idea, which is that you could actually buy the whole book, and then you could just choose any choice you want. Now, I don't believe in that. So for me, the idea would be kind of different. I think that if you were to buy the book, you would get all the canon choices. And so it would kind of shows what the canon choices are, which is the final version of the story, as in what would actually happen if the writer actually made all the choices. And I think that would be okay someone could buy it and they could see all the canon choices, and it would be it wouldn't be too expensive. It would actually be cheaper than actually going through and buying each individual choice. But you would have the option of downloading like all the chapters at once, or maybe not. You could optionally not do it, because if you look at the download size of a chapter, for example, it might be quite big, and so you don't want to have the whole book. And this book is going to be 22 chapters, and it's still growing, so it's just constantly going. And so I have ideas for stories right now. This is my ongoing story, which I've always kind of just like written and just kept up to date. And it's very autobiographical to me, but for the most part, it's just going to be like, it's going to be my kind of flagship product that I'm going to continuously update very slowly, not that fast. But I do have other ideas. I have the idea for I Dream of Skylar. I have another idea for Never Win Tonight. I have a story called The Vega Rift, which is more kind of like a cyberpunk sci-fi kind of thing. And I also have another one called, which is kind of based on a story which I came up with recently, actually. And so this one is, as you know, the most important part about this game is also the animation and the graphics. And so what was good about Storyscape was that they did a painterly kind of like almost like close to kind of more, it was just higher quality graphics with animations. And so I know exactly how to do that. I know exactly how to do those animations with the drawn characters. And I'm lucky because I'm an indie developer, so I can program this, I can draw this. The only thing I can't do is come up with the music, and so that's something that I'm going to have to outsource, but that's not going to be too hard to do. And so I pretty much have every part of the pipeline covered if I was just going to work on this by myself, so I don't need a big budget like Foxnext. No one's going to shut me down. The only thing I need to do is stay motivated. And so what you have here is these are outlines for the characters, basically designs. And so you basically design how the character might look like here. And then you give them different kind of clothing options. You got to make them bare for those very sexy scenes. And then also these characters, the way I'm able to draw characters in the way that they kind of look like the characters. And so they're going to have childhood versions that grow up, you know, and there's going to be those kind of choices that go that far back. And of course, they don't look like this in the final version. When I paint them in a painterly style, they look kind of photoreal. And so this is kind of something that's work in progress right now. As you see, you can have the drawing here below, and then like I slowly paint over it in layers in order to get it, you know, you take off the eyelashes, you know, you have, you know, these are all just things that I work on. And so these characters are going to look very, very realistic. And of course, I have this other character. This is a friend of mine. It's my best friend. Her name is Grace, and I'm actually making a story for her called Saving Grace. It's about a girl who goes back in time in several, she leaps through time in terms of like seeing someone's lifetime, but she doesn't do it in her own body. She does it in the body of other people, and she goes through time to try to help a certain person, right? And then that's basically just the idea of it. I'm not going to spoil anything. I don't want to tell too much about it, but this is also like kind of like a style that we're going for. So you know, they have like removable clothing and stuff, and they're going to have different outfits as well. So that's really important. And of course, they're done in a way that they're going to be designed in such a way that body parts are going to be separated. So, you know, this left leg is not really this left leg. It's going to be animated. So all these body parts are going to be separated and animated using a joint system. And I know exactly how to do that. So there's no worries there. So this is going to be pretty close to what Storyscape has. The art style is just slightly different because I don't do things in a painterly style. I kind of blend it more. And so that's just my style. This is what I have to work with. So this is what we're doing. We're going to have a app that looks pretty close to what Storyscape has in terms of its engine by the time I'm done. And I won't take a whole team to build it. But what Storyscape did differently is that it was a collaboration between a lot of people. And all those people probably had to put their opinions in and criticize it and stuff. And for me, I'm not going to have that kind of feedback. And so what I'm going to need is feedback from the community. And so I'm thinking at some point this will go into beta. I'm going to need people to test it. I'm going to need people to give feedback. And at some point, I might need people to help with the project as well. And we'll probably have to hire help to do that because we want to get as much content out as possible. But once the engine is done, that's going to be pretty much the basis of it. You're not going to need to put any more hard work into it. It's basically just going to be working on art and writing and music, and so we're just going to have to focus on supporting the arts after that. But that's basically all I wanted to say. This is the ideas that I'm working on, and so hopefully get some support here. I'm not sure when I'm going to have something playable ready. I'm going to be working on this kind of slowly a bit, because I haven't done legwork yet. This is all mock-ups, and so I'm going to start programming this eventually. I'm going to be animating these guys eventually, and then we're going to have a whole world of stories. Don't worry about the backgrounds. I didn't get any backgrounds in here yet. I'm not sure if I'm going to 3D model some of the story world. The thing is, there is a story world, and I do have a map for how it looks like, and so a lot of this stuff is basically just kind of stuff that I've worked on over the years. I know what it's gonna lead to. I know what it represents, and so it's not just gonna be kind of like working blindly. Of course, I'm open to the idea of, the story world not being used in every story. Maybe I want to do a fantasy world. Maybe I want to do something different. This world is already pretty. It's a pretty good mixture of fantasy, sci-fi, and all the stuff. So there is places to separate those. But I'm open to the idea of not being a shared story world as well, because sometimes you just need to be free from those limitations. I mean, maybe you're reading a storybook within the world, for all you know. So yeah, let me know what you guys think. I don't know if anyone is going to be out there even searching for something like this, but I guess sometimes you just got to announce that you're working on something, and then hopefully get some support on it. This is we're still work in progress, obviously, but hopefully you guys are excited by what you're seeing. I'm not just trying to piggyback off the success of something like Storyscape, but I am actually trying to spiritually pay homage to it. I wanted this thing to continue existing, because to me it's a special part of my life, and I always think that it was really high quality, really well done. I played other story apps, and like maybe 2 out of 10 stories were interesting to me, but with Storyscape, most of them were done really well, and so that to me is pretty inspiring, and I just think that it's something that should exist. And it's a shame that right now it's kind of like in limbo, or kind of like maybe you can't even revive it because the original team's not there, and that's always sad, because I've seen that happen to things that I've liked before, and I just think that there are people right now like me who still remember what this thing is and what it represents and how it feels and like just the mood of it. And so I think that right now, unless the original devs are gonna like get together and form their own company and just kind of build this thing on their own, I think we're the ones kind of holding the light at this point. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, share, subscribe if you like the stuff, and just let me know what you guys think in the comments about what I'm working on and what you guys think. Are you excited? I mean, is this interesting to you? Am I wasting my time? Let me know, and then I guess I'll just see you guys next time.